You know what? I get it. Whenever people hear 3 times the performance, they immediately think ray tracing, loading screens are basically non-existent, and all the games are going to just work perfectly right from the moment they download the game. You know what? In my opinion, it looks too good to be true. I've been playing games long enough to know that whatever you see online, whatever specs that you see, if you were to benchmark a certain console and it looks fantastic on paper, that does not specifically mean that it's going to perform well. And in this video, I'm going to explain it because right now there are some leaks that claim that PS6 could have triple the performance as the PS5 for the same price. You know, that sounds really good, but does that really translate into real world gaming? Let's dive into it. What's going on, everybody? This is Javier from Not For Normies, back again, and I'm talking today specifically about this whole leaked situation with the PS6 having triple the performance as the PS5 for the same price, which is absolutely nuts completely. This article is brought by Engadget, so just to give you guys a little bit of context, obviously, disclaimer, this is all done with a humongous grain of salt because, let's be real, these are leaks. At the end of the day, none of us know how much the PS6 is going to cost because it still has, you know, obviously the PS5 Pro has already come out, so they normally do that around the halfway mark of a console's life cycle. So the PS5 has been around since 2020, so wow, oh my god. Honestly, that's kind of crazy. The PS5 has been around since 2020. I actually got it around a little after it was released just because it was so awful trying to find it, and it was so difficult back then to actually get it. So obviously, take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt. Take this article with a grain of salt because you never know how it's going to pan out at the end of the day. So let's look into it. So while Sony hasn't confirmed anything, obviously, because who's Sony to actually confirm a leak? Let's be real. The leaks show the company may be prioritizing low power output and keeping costs in line with previous generations for the upcoming PS6. So congratulations to Sony for actually doing something that's smart, as opposed to Nintendo, who decided to increase the price of their Switches. God knows why. I honest to goodness wish I understood why in God's creation Nintendo decided, oh, you know what would be a great idea? For all of our last gen consoles, you know, Nintendo Switch, the Switch Lites, the Switch OLEDs, let's just bump up those. And I get it because, you know, I get it. Actually, no, I don't really understand because it doesn't really make any sense whatsoever to do that for a last gen console. But I understand it from a business perspective. Let me explain. Let me break it down real quick. I understand that they have to keep all these costs relatively close to each other. They're kind of doing kind of like what Apple does, in the sense that there has to be a ladder. There's a ladder that comes with this, especially since obviously we all know, and I get it, there's situations with the tariffs. I get it. I understand. Sure. But that does not mean that you hike up those prices for a last gen console that's been around for 10 years. Don't play games. And if you need more information on that, actually, did a fantastic video on it. I'll link it down below in the description because they actually did a fantastic talk on specifically that. But today we're doing PS5, so let me run this down. The video claims the next gen console will have 3 times the rasterization or 3D rendering performance compared to the base PS5 and roughly 2 times what's offered by PS5 Pro. That's a pretty good bump, you know, on paper. Let me just clarify that. It looks good on paper. The YouTuber explained that the PS6 is rumored to have PS4 and PS5 backwards compatibility. Yes. While potentially releasing with a price tag of $499. This has not been touched. They have not talked about anything with tariffs, anything to do with, obviously it's going to have better performance than the PS5 Pro or the PS5. I understand why they want to keep it in line with what's going on with, they don't want to piss people off. And honestly, that should be what everyone is shooting for. It makes zero sense why they would bump up that price. And honestly, most people, especially when it comes to playing these games, or playing the PS5 Pro, well, actually some more people than not, people who understand, like who play the PS5 Pro, they'll kind of understand a lot of the lingo that comes with all this stuff: teraflops, bandwidth, clock speeds. You know, there are a lot of people who are in the same ballpark as people who own a PC that still play PS5 because they want to play some of those exclusive PlayStation games, which makes a lot of sense. I actually own my own computer as well, which makes, you know, like being able to play some of those games with some of my friends and family members online a little bit easier. They'd rather do it on their PC than playing it on like a PS5 because they don't want to hash out the $500 that they would have spent on a PS5 and rather spend it on that amount on like a graphics card that will allow them to play these games at a higher frame rate and understand a little bit more about what, you know, they kind of understand a little bit more about those trigger words per se. But there's still a lot of consumers who buy a PS5 that have zero idea about teraflops, bandwidths, clock speeds. You know what? It doesn't really matter. None of those specs really matter if the games are not optimized for the experience. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody go out and buy a PS6 if there's not going to be a huge leap in performance? At least in my group of friends, I think I can count both hands how many people own a 4K TV. Not many, honestly. A 4K TV, yeah, I think I don't know that many people that own of my group of friends that own a 4K TV. You know, they could do 4K render, like 4K upscale. I get it. Like, it looks fantastic. But at the end of the day, I think we've gotten to a point in gaming where we're so beyond like those specs that it would really take a lot for somebody to be able to be like, you know what, this is worth my money. This is worth my investment because I know I'm going to be spending. I'm going to, when you buy a PlayStation 6, it's going to last you for at least 6 to 8 years. I've had mine since 2020. I've had it for 5 years, and my PS5, I play all my games on it and be fantastic. Honestly, I'm still debating whether or not to get PS5 Pro and trade in my PS5, but the real story is the developers. You know, they see all this performing power and, you know, they can do a bunch of stuff with all this. What is the likelihood that these games are going to be optimized to the max for the PS6 when the Nintendo Switch 2 just released and it is at, I would say it is at maybe a little less, like give or take, what the PS5 is running currently. And they just started this life cycle for the Nintendo Switch 2. So what is the likelihood that they kind of have to give and take, because they kind of have to divvy out all this, not everybody has all the time in the world to optimize these games for all these different consoles. Somebody's going to have to give, whether it be Xbox, whether it be PlayStation, whether it be Nintendo. Someone's going to have to take the bullet and not have their game optimized for their console. It's just going to be a matter of fact. And you know what? It still happens right now, because, there's still games that there's still games on the PS5 that there's still load screens. They may have good textures and they may look nice, but some of these games, you still have to put them into performance mode in order for them to run well. Like, if you put them in quality, man, do they chug. They're sitting at sometimes less than 30 frames a second, and it's tough to watch, man. It sucks for very demanding games. But I'm being for real. It really is tough to watch and play these games in quality. The hardware can only take you so far. Because there's great hardware does not mean that you're going to have a fantastic experience, because these games have to be optimized to do that, to really get to that level. They have to, or else they're just going to bite the dust. They're not going to perform well. So let's break down what 3 times performance could actually mean for us, the gamer, the guys who are actually in it, playing it on a regular basis, all in. So let's talk frame rate first, obviously, because for me, frame rate is king. If you're sitting at 60 frames a second, that's what I'm shooting for every single time. And I don't care if the game itself looks kind of muddy when I play it. I want it butter smooth 60 frames. I can't live without it. And for me, I am more of a frame rate snob than textures, the way it looks, because I played some pretty ugly games, and I would rather have a stable game that plays well than something that looks beautiful but chugs at like 20 frames a second. It's not gonna happen. Second, so obviously the PS6 is going to have a maybe, this is a high maybe, hit 4K 60. That's a very, the likelihood, like I said, it might happen. Second is faster load times. That could be helpful. Even for Spider-Man 2, obviously still has small delays. There are a couple of games that are still not that optimized, and from other consoles too. There's still consoles from the Xbox Series X does not have the best load times, especially with like games like Starfield, that game is tough to play. I actually played some of it on my ROG Ally. Holy cow, I can't even believe that thing even ran. But I played it on my PC, and it's pretty tough to play, man. It's not that easy. It's very difficult. So, I mean, with a stronger IO, memory bandwidth, those delays could be eliminated completely. They might, but obviously we're going to have to wait and see. And probably one of the big things that they're probably going to take advantage of, obviously, is AI. I mean, Sony's talked about it. Xbox has talked about it. They're going to do it. I know so many of us don't like AI in this space. It's going to make for shitty games. That is my hard-earned factual, what I believe in. AI has its place in so many different places. Marketing, like somebody who is a marketing professional on a normal basis, I believe that AI can take your company to so many different places. I understand it in so many different contexts. Gaming is a art. It is meant to be done by people. So I get that there might be some assistance with it when it comes to dynamic environments, design. I get it. There might be some helpful things, not just better lighting, but it could help out with NPCs, being a little bit more attentive and basically living their own world in a game, which sounds so cool. It sounds so dope. Very, I don't even know. I'm trying to figure out a comparison, but honestly, there's not really many comparisons I could actually bring up. But they're living their own worlds. Deliverance, that's what it is. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 specifically. They're living their own universe, and you basically just jump into it. So I honestly, that's really cool. But you have to really be careful when it comes to AI stuff in video games, or else people are gonna get pissed off, myself included. You guys better be careful. So what I kind of hinted at beforehand was game modes, specifically when it comes to performance mode and quality mode. Now you can kind of do both. Now I don't know if that means that a performance mode means even more frames than 60 frames, so it might be 90 or 100, 120. That would be super dope, especially when it comes to competitive shooters. You're now competing against that PC realm of frame rates where it's well over 100. Now that would be really cool, especially for games like Call of Duty, Apex Legends, those competitive shooters that are very intense and that every frame counts. That means a lot. But if you can get quality mode sitting at, say we play Ghost of Yotai, and Ghost of Yotai, if I wanted to do quality mode and it's sitting at 4K 60 frames a second, you've sold me. I love the way it looks. But performance mode, fantastic. I'm sure that it can look fantastic in a quality setting and make it look super cinematic and look unbelievable. And I'm like, oh my God, I'd be like foaming at the mouth. I can't even freaking believe it. But they have to get it to that level. Like they have to push it to that level, or else it's just not going to satisfy. Like if you're not getting it to that level, like why even get a PS6? Like why don't you just sit with a PS5 Pro, wait until that console drops in price, or just get it used and then call it a day. Like in my opinion, it just makes more sense to do it that way. And obviously, this is all at the end of the day, this is all just potential. Without the developers using all this power properly, these games could still look like crap. And they may just be, the same game with the same problems. And that's not okay for so many of us. Like when you buy a console and you expect all this power to be utilized to just play the game and it be basically the same experience throughout all the other different consoles, like why did you even spend all that money? Like it makes zero sense, bro. Like it literally no sense. So what are you gonna do with all this info? I get it. I'm gonna actually link the actual article below so you can look into it and actually read it for yourself. But what are you gonna do with all this info? What does it mean so that when the PS6 marketing starts hitting, what are you going to do? What are you looking for? What are you being careful about? So in my opinion, number one, don't buy all the buzzwords. Do not buy it. Don't buy it. You have to look at games in a gameplay setting. Like you cannot buy the marketing, the words on screen and be like, wow, it's so much performance. It's so much better. And then you watch it being played with a game and you're like, yeah, I mean, you can put them side by side. Honestly, you should follow some other content creators and look at some of the games that they're playing and watch whether or not when they're getting their hands on it. Honestly, if that happens to me, fantastic. I'll be the first one to start putting out content about PS6 and talking about all this other stuff because that would be fantastic. But start looking at comparisons between different games that they're putting up on screen, especially ones that are pretty demanding, and actually see whether or not they're optimizing these games for the hardware that they're providing. Because if not, do not spend your money. Don't waste your time. It's not even worth it, because if they're going to just shove out buzzwords to you, don't even waste your money buying it because it doesn't make sense. Second, watch how the devs are talking about their games in union with the PS6. When it comes to like this console war in particular, it is less about the consoles, and you can see it from Xbox, you can see it from PlayStation, you can see it from Nintendo, you can see any of them. The reason why somebody buys a console is because of the games, and if the games are not going to be optimized for the hardware, no one is going to buy it. And at the end of the day, they have to believe in the console in order to provide a good experience. Like if they believe that the console is not going to be good on Nintendo Switch, they're not going to bring it over. It's just not going to happen. They might bring it to Xbox, they might bring it to PlayStation, but maybe the hardware on Nintendo is just too lagging. So they have to pull that back and then be able to focus on consoles that are like on that specific type of hardware, something a little bit more upscale that's going to provide a better experience for the end user, us. That's what makes more sense. Now, if your game is not as demanding, obviously put your game everywhere. At the end of the day, game developers, they're a business too. Like at the end of the day, everybody wants to make money. They want to put their game out on everything. But at some point, there's a diminishing set of returns when it comes to putting your game out on specific consoles that may not be beneficial for your game in particular, specifically for games that are like either that will demand for more hardware, like for more specs. Like something that's more demanding will ask for better hardware so that they can really optimize the game for that experience. Like we're not gonna, I don't think in my lifetime we're gonna see, maybe, I said the same thing about The Witcher 3 showing up on Nintendo Switch, so I could potentially eat my words. Like I really could, to see like, for example, Starfield. I get it. It's an Xbox game, but like let's just take it for example. If I saw Starfield running on the Switch 2, I would freaking lose it. I wouldn't even I would be blown away. But for the most part, not many companies have the bandwidth to be able to be throwing people into those types of projects to optimize their game for something that's so low hardware. It's just not gonna make sense. Like it's tough to buy into it. It's a lot of money, and there are a lot of people, and they're making so many cuts to all these different companies. Like you really have to pick your battles really closely. And finally, in my opinion, I think you have to really decide whether or not, like, if you own a PS5 and you enjoy the experience that you have when you're playing your PS5, I say just chill and relax. In my personal opinion, I just say maybe hold up a little bit. Right now, I'm currently in this dilemma, and I'm going to tell you guys this specifically. Currently, I'm in this dilemma where I'm deciding on whether or not to get an I'm about to say N64. You can tell how old I am. I'm currently in the market to buying a Nintendo Switch 2. I might get it for my birthday. We'll see. I'm not sure. Not completely entirely sure. But currently, I'm happy with the experience I have on my Nintendo Switch. So is it really worth it to buy it? Though now with this whole news about, now I'm kind of more leaning towards buying the Switch 2, just because if Nintendo decides to hike up the prices on their Nintendo Switches, they are probably going to hike up the prices on their Switch 2s in a couple months, and that's going to piss me off, because then I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm going to hold off completely, because hard pass. Especially when I can just get the same experiences, and I get it, because you can't buy the games. You can't buy the games, because I already saw, I've seen the reviews for the new Donkey Kong game, and I want to freaking play it, and unfortunately I can't do it because I don't have a Switch 2, and it's really driving me off a wall. So there's give and takes. You kind of have to see where the company's heading, if you're going to enjoy those games more. And I think at the end of the day, specs don't really matter so much when it comes to hardware anymore, because there's such a fine line between all the different consoles, and it's getting a little bit tougher for people to gravitate towards one ecosystem versus another, because they're all so viable. They all are just really good, and there's very tiny, minuscule differences between next generation consoles. It's just really tough. So if you enjoy being on your PS5, I would say hold off, unless there's going to be like a PS6 game that you're like, I need to play it. Like, for example, for me, if there was a new Spider-Man game, if there's a new Ratchet and Clank, I'm probably going to buy it. I'm not even going to front. I'm probably going to buy it. If Ghost of Yotai was only going to be on PS6, I'd probably buy it. Then you start thinking about what games are like console sellers. I think back to like Xbox, where like Halo was the console seller. Like that, everyone bought an Xbox back then. Like it was crazy. It was freaking bananas, and everyone bought one. It's freaking nuts. Now I think they're getting into that same space where, well, obviously back then, now, like when you go look at the Xbox 360 to the Xbox, there's like a huge jump in performance, and obviously that's like a big leap where it was worth it for you to upgrade to that Xbox One. But nowadays, there's so little that it actually makes even more sense to make sure that these games, like that they're able to get these games that are such great and unique experiences, because that's what's going to really sell the console, not so much the hardware that it provides. In closing, sorry, because I've been rambling for God knows how long. Power without purpose is strictly noise. Case in point, power without purpose makes 0 sense. So if the PS6 is going to give you all these different, they're like from the article itself, you're gonna see it, and there's so much they're gonna provide. They're gonna promise this, and they're gonna promise this. They're gonna promise 120 frames per second, and there's not gonna be any more loading times, and all this other stuff. And you know what? That sounds great. Show me the games. No one's out here to like buying consoles for the hardware. They're buying consoles because of the games. Unless you're a scalper, in which case you're buying the consoles to just make a profit. So don't be that guy. But if you're a real gamer, you're out here buying consoles for the games that you're going to play them on. Right now I have so many more PS5 games than my Nintendo Switch games because the hardware on on my Switch has been abysmal. So currently playing them for the games. I'm actually updating. I'm like getting so many more vintage consoles because the games that they have on those consoles are just so great. Like their experiences, even though because at the end of the day, they may look less great than the Xbox Series X or the PS5 Pro. But when you're playing some of those experiences on your Xbox 360 or your N64 or your Game Boy Color, because that would be freaking dope, or a Game Boy Advance, you remember all those different experiences and you're like, man, this game was awesome. You don't really think like the console was fantastic. No, bro, the games are fantastic. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. We're gonna have to wait and see if, the obviously check out the leaks. It looks really cool, but at the end of the day, the console is not gonna sell itself. You have to add games to it or else it doesn't matter at all. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in any more of my videos, I have one right here. And I think I'll have one right here as well. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and obviously turn on notifications so whenever I make a video, you guys know immediately when the video comes out so you don't miss a thing. But thank you guys so much for watching, and once again, this is Javi from Not For Normies. Later.